Hey guys, I'm recording these mini lectures for you guys. I miss you terribly. I am sad that I can't continue to see you face to face this semester, but we're going to learn no matter what. These lectures are not intended to be all inclusive, so you will still need to look through the notes that I put up on Blackboard and also read your chapters. This particular one is going to be about protists. So, what the heck are they? What are protists? Well, the big idea for this chapter is that protists are basically a bridge between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So remember when we talked about cell theory and we talked about the endosymbiotic theory? That's what this picture is showing you on the screen right now. Remember we talked about that there was some foldings inside the plasma membrane that gave rise to endomembrane components like the nucleus and the endoplasmic reticulum. And then at some point, this prokaryote ingested or consumed an aerobic bacteria that eventually became a mitochondria. And then they ingested a photosynthetic bacteria that then became a chloroplast. And so that's what we think of as our modern eukaryotes. So this particular organism, a protist, is in the domain eukarya. So it does have membrane-bound organelles and a membrane-bound nucleus. But usually when we see them, they're unicellular. So we see this as kind of that evolutionary bridge between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So they are a very diverse kingdom. There are lots and lots of different times, and I really encourage you to look through your book and see the different types of protists. I'm going to give you a couple of them, but they're so diverse. And usually we classify them as either animal-like, plant-like, or fungus-like because they are like those things, but they're their own kingdom. So they are like animals in that they are heterotrophs and they're motile, meaning that they can move. They are, however, unicellular. This is not a bacteria. When we think of unicellular things, we usually think of bacteria, but you can see that they have a nucleus, a membrane-bound nucleus and membrane-bound organelles, which show you that they are, in fact, a eukaryote. They include the flagellates, the ciliates, and the sporozoans. Flagellates, remember, are the ones that have the whip-like tail. Ciliates, this is a ciliate right here, and you can see those cilia, those little hair-like fibers all the way around it. When I say that they're heterotrophs, remember that means that they eat other things. So they eat plants, bacteria, protozoans, those kinds of things. This particular animal-like protozoan has what we call an oral groove. You can see in these animal-like protozoans that they do have primitive mouth and digestive organs. So this one has an oral groove. When the contents come in, they go into a cytostome, which is kind of like a lysosome, like we think of to break it down or digest it. So this is kind of like their stomach. And then they have an anal pore where they push out the waste products that they don't need or they can't digest. So very cool. They are very diverse and they are called protozoa, and many of them cause diseases. One in particular that we've talked about, but we haven't talked about it being caused by a protist, is malaria. We talk about it being carried by mosquitoes, but in fact, what they're carrying is this protist called Plasmodium. And when it gets into the body, it moves from the cyst stage to the trophozoite stage. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But these heterotrophs, this is a rotifer. So this is a different type of protozoan. And you can see he's pretty big in comparison to Euglena. Remember, we looked at Euglena when we looked at the pond water slides. So this right here are a pair of jaws called the trophy. And this is what he uses to eat and chew up bacteria, other protists like Euglena, and plant and algae material. So that's a different type of oral ingester or a mouth organ. So this is a picture, obviously microscopic, of the two life stages of an animal like protist. So the red part is a cyst, and that's what's going to protect it from environmental stresses. Like it's going to protect it from heat, from pH changes, from salinity changes, which remember is the changing of salt in the environment that it's in. And so they can last a long time in those cysts. And then the purple is a trophozoite, which in your organisms that are causing diseases are going to be the pathogenic or the disease causing phase. In other animal-like protozoan, this is going to be what stage they go in to feed and reproduce and spend most of their life as long as it's not threatened. The next kind we're going to talk about are plant-like. They are called plant-like because they're non-modal, so they don't move. We did talk about plants moving towards the sun, but they don't get up and move to a different place. They are photosynthetic autotrophs, meaning that they make their own food through photosynthesis. They can be unicellular or multicellular, and they can reproduce both sexually and asexually. So when we talk about photosynthetic autotrophs, there are some that use chlorophyll, but a lot of them use accessory pigments like carotenoids or xanthophylls, things like that. They don't have a true stem or root or leaf system like a plant, and so that is why they are called plant-like, but they're not actually plants. Depending on the type, depends on how they reproduce. When we talk about unicellular or multicellular, some algae are unicellular, meaning they're made up of just one cell, and some are multicellular. For example, kelp, which is a type of seaweed that you see, it's actually an algae, and it is multicellular. And kelp is huge. It makes gigantic forests on the ocean floor that lots of different animals use for food, for hiding, all kinds of things. So this right here is Sporigia. And you can see that these are still eukaryotic because they have that nucleus right there. They are reproducing in a form called conjugation, and that is where genetic material from two cells are exchanged through these conjugation tubes right here. And then the zygote becomes a mixture of the DNA of those two original adult cells, which is pretty neat. The last kind of protist we're going to talk about is fungus-like, and they are super gross little dudes. They can be motile, which means that they can move, so that's different than fungi. They absorb nutrients by saprophyia or parasitism. So being saprophytic means that you digest and absorb nutrients through of dead and decaying material. And so that's why they're fungus-like. They're similar to fungus in that way. Unlike fungus, their cell walls are made out of cellulose instead of chitin. And they also do not have like cell divisions like we would think of. The protists don't have cell divisions in their slime molds and water molds like we would think of. And also their nucleus is diploid, meaning 2N instead of haploid, which fungi are haploid. So they're grouped as either a slime mold or a water mold. If you've ever had like a fish die in water and you forget about it for a couple of days, and you go back and look, there are white strands that are coming off of it. And this is a water mold. It's actually helping the decaying process of that fish, and it's recycling those nutrients. This is probably my favorite fungus-like protist. It is called dog vomit slime mold, and it is disgusting looking, but it can move. Now, it can't move fast. It's not like it's like sliding across the floor at you, but it can move, and that to me is super creepy and super gross. So those are protists. Remember that they're animal-like, plant-like, or fungus-like, and that they are unicellular or multicellular, but they're that bridge between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So the next video I'm going to be doing is going to be plants. And remember, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me by email to hit me up with a remind, or to visit me during my virtual office hours. So I'll talk to you guys later.